Hey traders, Cousin Benny coming to you on Saturday, June 14th with a look at the week ahead. This is a chart of the comp weekly, noting that we had support here along the 40 period moving average, the blue line, and moved higher over the last few weeks. MACD is crossing, and we see NAMO is positive and is fading currently. The number of stocks trading above the 50 period moving average are at 84, and I would expect to see that pull back in a little bit in the weeks ahead. Note that we had a doji on the weekly on this past week, so we'll be watching to see how this plays out with the news in Iraq over the next week. We managed to hold up pretty well considering that news. The industrials continue to trade right just below the 17,000 level, an area where we broke above previously at the 16,588 level. We came down and tested that, and we closed a little bit higher towards the end of the week. Note MACD. New York Stock Exchange Composite Index, a number 1,867 stocks in that index, continues to drift higher. We had a spinning top this past week, but the moving averages continue to point higher, and MACD is positive above its signal line. The Russell risk is waning somewhat. We had risk on the past 2-3 weeks, and then last week we had a spinning top, long-legged doji above the moving average, which is starting to turn back up. We thought we were going to see lower prices, but it looks like we had buyers step back in. It's very possible we could come up and test this trend line that we broke back in April and March, so keep an eye on that on the Russell. Note the MACD is about to cross here. S&P 500, MACD cross, and prices are at highs. The 10-year yield, we noted that the moving averages had turned over and that we tested the shorter term period moving average the past 2 weeks and moved off of that level. So we're looking at the support level that goes back to 2010, and support here currently is holding, but note that MACD has continued to drift lower. The XII Institutional Index, ARK Institutional Index, is a index composed of 75 of the stocks in core holdings of institutions, and it continues to see higher prices as well, with a spinning top last week. Note MACD is crossed and moving higher. AGG, the Barclays Aggregate Bond Fund, this is what most bond funds use as their benchmark. Note that we came back down to the 108 level, tested that, and now we have a doji. We had a doji on Friday, or this week. The moving averages continue to point higher, so I'd expect a bounce here as we go into the summer months. Typically, the last 3 weeks of June are weaker, so I would expect to see bonds catch some footing here. Note the 7-10-year bond fund is in between this Kirby level with this Kirby ceiling a little smaller than the Kirby shelf down here. Moving averages are moving higher after a crossover that we saw in the beginning of the year. TLT, we have this big Kirby band here, a shelf that prices are currently trading inside of. We had a moving average crossover beginning of the year, and prices are finding buyers here last week. Note the shadows here on these candles, noting that we saw buyers bring this prices back up. We had a pretty interesting day on Friday on the daily and Thursday as well. Note MACD is crossing on daily, and that we have some bit of resistance here, but prices are generally moving higher off of the Tuesday low that we saw, this doji here. Okay, so I'm expecting TLT to move higher. Note the test of this moving average here on Thursday and Friday. Okay, so let's take a look at some stocks. Baker Hughes didn't do much today. Basic Energy Services, same thing. Biofuel Energy Corp, moving off the highs. Blue Dolphin Energy still creating that tight flag. We had a 100% move here, so it completed criteria number 1 of a high tight flag. Now we're creating the flag, and we look to break out. A breakout above 874 would be a trigger. CJES, C&J Energy Services, saw some buyers down here at the moving average, the 10 period, but didn't make a lot of headway, didn't get above these recent highs. Cimarex Energy did quite well today, moved all the way back down to the 10 period EMA, found buyers, and the stock moved higher. Consol Energy, inside day, we'll be watching that one after that large volume bar we saw on Thursday. Continental Resources, nice little pullback there outside the upper Bollinger Bands, but the volume is looking pretty good, and momentum continues to push higher. Diamondback, what can you say about this stock? I believe Mikey is long right around the breakout level here, so today was plus 3.25. I believe he's up a little over $10.50 on this particular stock that was on the scan a few weeks back when it was building this base right here and Bollinger Bands squeezed. Note the volume. EMES building another flag, holding right at the 20 period moving average, the dotted line, the center line of the Bollinger Bands. You can see that they're starting to compress again. We'll be waiting for this stock to consolidate a little further, and hopefully MACD will turn. Stochastics is already starting to lead, so this could easily push higher in the very near future. Energen, this appeared on the scan this week, still looks good. Had a nice reversal off the 20 or the 10 period EMA. Had a nice reversal off the 10 period EMA. Stochastic bounce here, and MACD's moving sideways, but note the volume. The Energy Select Sector ETF continues to move higher. With the Iraq news, I would imagine that this is going to continue until we see some sort of decisive action against the insurgents. Enlink, we pointed this stock out on Monday. It reversed at highs and has since consolidated. We're still watching this for a move off of the 20 period. Notice that we saw buyers come in right here at the 20 period and push prices back up. So we had 4 dojis in a row. We'll see how this works out on Monday. No volume to speak of on that selling, so that's not a big deal. We'll be watching this going into next week. FET, we saw this one again. Look at all of the buying along the 10 period EMA as this stock continues to move higher along the 10 period. Goodrich Petroleum, we got back in this, I believe it was Monday or Tuesday at 28.15, and it continues to hold a 10 period EMA. We had a doji today, but on lower volume, no big deal. We'll see how this trades over the next couple of weeks. We like Goodrich. Halcon, depending on how you pronounce it, Resources, HK. We took this, or I should say we added to this position yesterday, and we had a little bit of a harami candle today. Not quite, but it did manage to make it above the highs of Thursday. So playing with an inside day, but we saw a few of those instances over the last several weeks where we press to new highs and then we consolidate. So HK is a shale play. We think this is going to continue to move higher. The Tuscaloosa shale probably will see this stock continue higher going into the next few weeks in the summer. If we look at the weekly chart, we can see that we broke this trend line here, and we continue to march higher along the upper Bollinger Bands, and looking quite good there. Halliburton had a nice candle today. Nice 10-period EMA test. Didn't get quite down to the 20-period moving average, but we did see some volume on Thursday. It's moving higher. Kodiak, we talked about this stock on Monday when we saw it breaking above these levels here. So you can see that we have this candle here where we broke above, and the next 4 days just continue to move higher. Note the volume, and stochastics is overbought, but the MACD continues to point higher on this name. Matador Resources, we saw this name as it was pressing above this closing candle here, continues to move higher, running along the upper Bollinger Bands as MACD crossed early in the week, and RSI continues to move higher. We'd like to see more volume. We don't have a position in that stock. Nabors Industries continues to show up on the scan. We have these quick little Bollinger Band squeezes. It pops up, squeeze again, pops up, squeeze, and so forth. So we're expecting this to squeeze again and prices to move sideways here. Note the volume. Pampa Energy, I believe a couple of people on the Day Trader Bootcamp site are trading this particular name. Had a nice test of the midline of the Keltner channel, the red dotted line. Didn't get down to the 20 period, and it closed above the 10 period EMA this entire week. So we're expecting this to move higher going into the week as MACD looks like it's trying to turn and stochastics has recycled again. PTEN just drifting higher, grinding along the upper Bollinger Band was without any explosion in the Bollinger Bands at this point, but MACD did cross and it is drifting higher. Note the volume. Pioneer Resources, this one just continues to move higher like FANG did, Diamondback, as it broke above this level and continues to grind. Expensive stock, but nice nonetheless. This is a chart that we posted previously where 2 times before where Bollinger Band squeezed, we traded this and then saw resistance at these levels. Again, we squeezed here and now we're moving higher. Profire Energy was a name that popped up on the High Tide Flag scan where we see building from a low here at $2.89 within a 60-day period, just shy just over 60 days, we managed to see almost a 100% increase. So we're still watching this name, though it doesn't meet criteria number 1, which is a 90% increase within 60 days of a low that we see here. Range Resources did in fact hit this double top area and fail like we thought may occur. So this one looks a little weak now that we hit the lower Bollinger Band. Superior Energy continues to grind higher with support of the 10 period EMA and grinding between the upper Bollinger Band and the 10. Vertex Energy, this is a name that popped up on the High Tide Flag scan back in this area here where we had a 60-day increase from a low of $3.43 up to $9. So we had quite a nice move there on this Bollinger Band squeeze and pop. The whole idea behind a High Tide Flag, is the way I read it, is that when you see accumulation and a run-up of 90 to 100% or more within a short time frame, it just means that this is a signal of the elephant in the bathwater. Institutions buying a stock heavily for whatever reason. You need to do research at that point, but then the stock flags and then it starts to take off. So with High Tide Flags, we can see that the performance rank of the 23 patterns that Bukowski studied over a multi-year period was number 1 out of 23 patterns. the average rise 69%, and the change after the trend ends. When you start to see topping candles, we could see a pullback to the 382 basically. And the percentage meeting the price target are very high at 90%, both in bull and bear markets. With high type flags, you can see with the 253 stocks that were studied in this particular pattern, what the maximum rise was for those stocks. 67% of those stocks, or 173, rose at least 75% beyond the breakout on a high type flag. So you can see the statistics are very high and very rewarding, and the main reason why we like to trade this particular pattern. Even if you look at between 42 and 59% of those stocks, we saw a 25 to 30% rise after the breakout of a high type flag pattern. The breakout is when the prices move above the pole. That's your trigger. So let's run a new scan for the weekend. So we have 11 candidates in the Bollinger Band TTM Squeeze scan. Energen shows up again. It was on last week as well. You can see we're breaking above highs, and stochastics is bounced at 50, and MACD continues to move sideways with volume starting to pick up somewhat. Bollinger Bands are expanding, and we're looking for a TTM trigger here. Gas log, this was on the scan last week. We were looking at these highs here. Prices did dip down and test the 20 period moving average, but buyers stepped back in and pushed prices back up. Okay, so that's gas log, or GLOG. Note MACD is crossing, and stochastics recycled and is leading the way with volume picking up. Gulfport Energy Corp, we've traded this one before. Really nice little pattern here, getting above, prices moving back above the Kirby here. Not a lot of volume, but we did have a MACD cross and stochastics turning back up in agreement along with the RSI on GPOR. Be interesting to see if it fills this gap. There's no resistive volume up here above the Kirby, so the fact that this dropped so fast, there's no sellers in here per se. The names that held along this level here will be looking to sell, of course, but NOG, you know what this, we took this stock on a dip early in the morning. We were looking for a retracement back into the morning candle, which we got, and we got in, I believe, at 1575-ish, somewhere around there. I have to check my records, but we were expecting a pullback, and that's exactly what we got. Patterson Energy, PTEN, testing these highs here. We could see a move higher with a MACD cross and volume. Southwest Energy, SWN, looks nice. Note the big Kirby bar here. Prices managed to get back above this. Could be some resistance short term. 200 period is pretty much flat to slightly upsloping, and Keltner is sideways. So we probably stay away from this name. But stochastics has turned, so this could turn back up if volume picks up on SWN. High type flags, we can see we did quite well this week. Amaya Gaming, that was a name that showed up early in the week. We saw this move. This showed up on the scan at $5.61 as a low, and we ran up to $11.63 within a short time frame. We saw this flag here and said, sent out the blog post that this would be a good entry on anticipation using a buy stop above this level here, this flag. And then of course the news came in later in the week, and the stock appreciated from 1050 up to 20 and change in short order. Amcor continues to look good. We saw this way back in May where we were flagging here. We had the increase on a high tight flag that we needed for criteria number 1 with these lows, and then we saw the possibilities in Amcor. We also looked at the monthly chart, which signaled something was going to happen We saw the break of these highs, and the Bollinger Bands rip higher on really nice volume, and stochastics was moving higher as well. So Amcor, we saw this one a couple of months ago, and it continues to be a treat for anyone who managed to get into it when we first talked about the flag back here in the first week of May. You can check back on the blog posts. You go to the site, just come over here to the search function, type in Amcor or anything else that you might happen to be looking for. It'll search for when stocks or criteria were mentioned, high type flags for example, and you can scroll back through these and see where we mentioned Amcor. Okay, so you can see the 19th, we can see where we started to mention Amcor on the high type flag scans right here. Okay, we looked at the monthly chart, which was very impressive at the time. So it continued to move higher through the month of June as well, as you know if you've been following the blog. AGC is a new issue, one that we've been pointing out, had a nice increase here in less than 5 weeks. From a low here at 11.10 we had a double, and prices continued to move higher. So this is a name we mentioned early in the week when it showed up on the scan. So keep an eye on AGTC. BDSI, we pointed this one out early in the week. We had a nice increase from 671. We haven't quite gotten to 90%, so this one's still on the watch list. Blue Dolphin, flagging here, more of a vertical run, less accumulation. So being this is a thinly traded name, we're really just watching the name as it builds a pattern more from a statistical standpoint, keeping track of our list or group of high type flags that since we've been following these back in April, May. We're building a list much like Bukowski did. China Plastics, this is an example of one that broke down. Obviously these do fail, as you note from the previous statistics. 90% meet their target, but there is 10% who do fail, and note the huge volume here. So we never did take this trade, but it is looking much weaker. Concordia Health, starting to see some selling there on volume, so this one will probably get taken off the list. Dominion Resources, this is new. Interesting move from 658 up to 11. Note the volume, it's probably short covering. Goodrich Petroleum continues to move sideways. No reason to sell just yet. If it loses a 20 period, I'd probably stop out of this. Or if you want it to be tighter, I would take it out if it lost the low on Thursday. Houghton Royalty Trust, we saw this name increasing from $7.38. Not quite 90% yet, but it has a little bit of time, about a week, to make that move. So it probably won't meet the criteria number one of a high tight flag, but we were watching it nonetheless. Mankind, building a tight flag here, so this one could do something interesting. $6 up to $11, and $3.80 up to $11 within a short time frame. Technically, this low up to this high meets criteria number one because it did it within a 60-day period, and then it started flagging at the very tail end of May, early June. That's Mankind. Watch MACD here, and Stochastics looks like it's starting to turn, so this be a risky trade, but something maybe you want to throw $100 at, or 100 shares at, for a breakout in anticipation on a buy stop. So if the price meets, say, $10.75, your buy stop will trigger and you'll be long the stock. With a breakout above 11.11, this one could go. Marathon Group, new on the list, fairly thinly traded name. Muscle Pharma, we looked at this on Thursday, Friday, but we didn't say anything about it only because it was a very thinly traded name, below 100,000 shares a day, and it did have a move on Thursday and Friday nonetheless. ProSensa, this is a name that ACE 52-week high also mentioned to me, a low at 412, ran up more than 100% within 60 days, so we had the criteria number 1 of a high tide flag, built the pole, and now we're flagging. So I want to see this stay tight here and possibly a breakout higher. Quest Resources, this one dumped a little bit but found support at the 20 period, so we're still watching this one. I would tend to like the stocks like RadNet, which are more tight when they form their flags, rather than what we see here where we have this dump. Just shows that there's some weak hands in here, and it's a cheap stock anyway, but something to keep an eye on. RadNet continues to perform, so it hasn't done anything stupid yet. RiceBran Technologies, it did find support down here at the 20 period and continues to move higher. The 200 period we thought would be resistance. It didn't quite get there and it got rejected, so we're watching what happens here on this thinly traded name. Cypress Solutions, building a flag here, could go 285 up to 650 within 5 weeks. And Wilden Group with a tight flag here starting to form, it looks like. We keep an eye on that name. Okay, so that takes care of the scans for the weekend. This is Cousin Vinny coming to you from theclosingprint.com. Take care, I hope this helps, and we'll talk to you later.